And I think that's where a lot of the confusion that you see in the Bible comes from. To use that as a guidebook for life.
I think that's where a lot of the confusion that you see in the Bible comes from, to use that as a guidebook for life. Why was the Book of Enoch removed from the Bible? Imagine a book so mysterious, so controversial, that the Vatican wanted nothing to do with it. The Book of Enoch, an ancient text filled with tales of fallen angels, hidden knowledge, and a secret cosmic order, was banned by the Bible. This is a part of the biblical stories of angels and devils, and that's what they are really talking about. They're talking about these interdimensional beings and the darkest truths. But what truth does it reveal, and why, after centuries, is it suddenly gaining attention again? Join us as we bring you how Joe Rogan reveals that the Vatican just shut down the Book of Enoch after it revealed this. The ancient Book of Enoch is a book that was quite popular during the first 700 years of church history but then faded from sight. Nobody republished it, it disappeared. Joe Rogan has never been one to shy away from controversial topics, whether it's government conspiracies, ancient civilizations, or hidden knowledge. He thrives on exploring ideas that challenge mainstream narratives. That's exactly why the Book of Enoch, a mysterious text rejected by the Vatican, fits right into his wheelhouse. On his podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience, he has hosted numerous guests who specialize in lost history, suppressed knowledge, and religious mysteries, from Graham Hancock, who questions mainstream archaeology, to Randall Carlson, who dives into ancient catastrophes. Rogan consistently explores the idea that history as we know it might not be the full story. When it comes to religious texts, he's particularly fascinated by the ones that were left out of the Bible. So, what makes a book like Enoch so interesting to Rogan? It's simple: he loves a good mystery. And when religious institutions actively reject something, it only fuels more curiosity. Why was this book excluded? What secrets does it contain? And, more importantly, was it hidden from the public on purpose? Rogan has a knack for questioning authority, whether it's in politics, science, or religion. He often argues that institutions, especially powerful ones like the Vatican, have a long history of controlling narratives. That's why discussions about the Book of Enoch tend to focus on whether the Church had an agenda in keeping it out of the official biblical canon. Was it because it challenged traditional teachings? Did it contain knowledge that would shift the way people understand Christianity? These are the kinds of questions that make Rogan's listeners lean in closer. One of his most interesting discussions on this topic happened when he spoke with Dr. Michael Heiser, a biblical scholar who specializes in ancient texts. Heiser explained how the Book of Enoch describes angels, the watchers, coming down to earth, teaching humans secret knowledge, and ultimately corrupting them. This concept of divine beings interacting with humans challenges mainstream Christian teachings, and that alone might explain why the Church distanced itself from the text. Beyond just Enoch, Rogan has also talked about other banned or forgotten religious texts. The Gospel of Thomas, for example, contains sayings attributed to Jesus that paint a very different picture of Christianity. The Dead Sea Scrolls have reshaped scholars' understanding of early Judaism and the roots of Christianity. The idea that religious institutions could have actively hidden certain books because they didn't align with their agenda is exactly the kind of discussion Rogan thrives on. You may ask yourself, if the Vatican ignored or even suppressed the Book of Enoch, then the big question is, what's actually in it? Why would this ancient text be so controversial that it was left out of the Bible? To understand why Joe Rogan and so many others are fascinated by it, we need to take a deeper look at what this book actually says. The Book of Enoch is an ancient Jewish text believed to have been written between 300 BCE and 100 CE. It is traditionally attributed to Enoch, the great-grandfather of Noah, the same Noah from the famous flood story. Unlike many other biblical figures, Enoch stands out because the Bible states that he didn't die. Instead, he was taken by God, Genesis 5 verse 24, a mysterious statement that has fueled speculation for centuries. Some believe he ascended into a higher realm and was given divine knowledge. The Book of Enoch claims to reveal what he saw. The text is divided into several sections, each with its own strange and mystical content. One of the most famous parts is the Book of the Watchers, which tells the story of a group of angels known as the Watchers who descended to earth and interacted with humans. These fallen angels, led by a figure named Semjaza, taught humanity various forms of forbidden knowledge: metallurgy, weapon-making, astrology, and even cosmetics. They also took human wives, which resulted in the birth of the Nephilim, giant hybrid beings who were said to be immensely powerful and dangerous. This part of the book aligns with a brief mention in the canonical Bible, Genesis 6 verses 1 to 4, about the sons of God taking human wives and creating the Nephilim. But the Book of Enoch expands on this idea in incredible detail. The book also describes how these angels corrupted the world, leading to chaos, violence, and ultimately divine punishment. According to the text, God ordered a great flood not just to cleanse humanity's wickedness, but specifically to wipe out the Nephilim and their influence. This idea adds a whole new dimension to the Noah's Ark story. Was the flood really about sinful humans, or was it about eliminating these hybrid beings? Another section of the book, known as the Book of Parables, introduces Enoch as a prophet who has visions of heaven and hell. It describes a coming messianic figure referred to as the Son of Man, a term later associated with Jesus in the New Testament. Some scholars believe that early Christians may have drawn inspiration from the Book of Enoch, even though it was never officially recognized by the Church. Why the Vatican never recognized the Book of Enoch? You may ask yourself, if this book was considered important enough to be widely read in ancient Jewish communities, and if fragments of it were found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, why did the Vatican never include it in the official Bible? To understand that, we have to look at how the biblical canon was formed. Contrary to what many people assume, the Bible didn't just appear in its final form one day. It was carefully curated over centuries by early church leaders who debated which books to include and which to leave out. The Book of Enoch was one of the texts that didn't make the cut. But why? One of the main reasons the Vatican never recognized Enoch as part of the Bible is that it presents a version of religious history that doesn't fully align with traditional Christian doctrine. The book goes into extreme detail about fallen angels, the Watchers, their corruption of humanity, and the birth of the Nephilim, stories that expand upon brief references in the Bible but add layers of supernatural elements that early Christian leaders may have found too problematic. The Catholic Church has always maintained a structured hierarchy of theology, carefully defining the role of angels, demons, and divine beings. The Book of Enoch, however, describes a far more chaotic and rebellious world where angels act independently, break divine laws, and directly interfere with human affairs. The idea that certain angels gave humans forbidden knowledge ranging from warfare to makeup didn't sit well with early church leaders, as it seemed to suggest that some of humanity's greatest innovations came from sources outside of God's plan. It wasn't widely accepted in early Christianity. Unlike the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, which were widely circulated and accepted by early Christian communities, the Book of Enoch never gained widespread popularity in mainstream Christianity. While it was read by some Jewish groups and even referenced in a few early Christian writings, it never reached the level of universal acceptance required to be considered scripture. One major factor in this was that early Jewish leaders had already rejected it from their own canon. By the time Christianity was forming its own biblical collection, Jewish authorities had already deemed Enoch as a non-canonical text, making it even less likely that Christian leaders would include it. If the Book of Enoch was just another old religious text, it wouldn't be nearly as interesting, but it's not just old, it's filled with ideas so unusual, so shocking, that they stand out even among other ancient writings. The Vatican didn't recognize it. Early Jewish scholars distanced themselves from it. And yet, it refuses to be forgotten. Why? Because it makes some truly mind-bending claims. If these ideas were once considered dangerous or heretical, that only makes them more intriguing. So, what exactly does the Book of Enoch say that made religious authorities so uncomfortable? Here are some of its most controversial revelations. The Book of Enoch describes a group of angels known as the Watchers, who were sent to observe humanity. But instead of simply watching, they became involved, very involved. They descended to earth, took human wives, and taught humans forbidden knowledge. This wasn't just any knowledge. According to the book, the Watchers introduced metallurgy, leading to the creation of weapons, astrology, magic, and even makeup. The idea that powerful divine beings were responsible for advancing human civilization is a radical one. In contrast, mainstream religious teaching emphasizes that wisdom and knowledge should come from God, not rebellious angels. The biggest issue is this directly contradicts the narrative that human progress was guided by divine will alone. If the Watchers really did educate early humans, does that mean our advancements weren't part of God's original plan? That's exactly the kind of theological dilemma that could make church authorities uncomfortable. The Book of Enoch doesn't just dwell on the past, it also makes bold predictions about the future. It speaks of a coming apocalypse, divine judgment, and the arrival of a messianic figure referred to as the Son of Man, a title later associated with Jesus in the New Testament. If this book was written long before Christianity, how did it contain a concept that later became central to Christian belief? Some argue that early Christians may have been influenced by Enoch's prophecies, while others believe it's just a coincidence. Either way, it's strange to see ideas from a banned book echoing through later religious traditions. In multiple podcast episodes, Rogan has brought up lost knowledge, ancient mysteries, and how mainstream academia often ignores alternative theories when discussing religious history. He often questions why certain stories were emphasized, while others were buried. If ancient people once took Enoch seriously, and if it was still considered scripture in some traditions, doesn't that mean it holds value? One of the key points Rogan makes is that humans have a natural curiosity for the unknown. The more we learn, the more we realize how much has been hidden either deliberately or through time. That's why people are drawn to these forgotten books. It's not necessarily about whether they are 100% true, but about the bigger picture, what else is missing.